Good morning in this beautiful day here in Ottawa. We just had a press conference with the Honorable Ed Fast, and our message was very clear that yes, we're thankful for the delay in the law to permit euthanasia for mental illness alone, but that's not good enough. We are wanting that to not only be reversed, but I pointed out at the end of the press conference it's much more than this because we have now in Canada euthanasia for people who are homeless, people who are living in poverty, people who are having problems getting medical treatment. We've had quite a few stories. People who have cancer who are told they're treatable, and then they get on the waiting list, and then they're waiting to get their treatment and end up dying by euthanasia because they weren't treated. This is the kind of thing that's happening. On top of it, this is not about choice, it's not about autonomy, it's not about freedom, it is about killing. So I have a few presentations we have this morning. Leah Malusis is going to speak first. Leah is a human rights lawyer here in Ottawa who's been involved with this issue for quite some time as a law student and now as a lawyer, but also has a personal story to share with you, and I think it's very important to have our personal stories to understand how this affects average Canadians.
Well, thank you, everyone. Good morning, and I appreciate everyone being here. Thank you to those who have taken. I can talk a little louder. Thank you to those who have taken time out of your day to come here. This is an important issue, and it's one that's deeply personal to me. Alex mentioned that I'm a human rights lawyer. I've approached this issue and advocacy related to this issue from a professional perspective for a long time. I followed the Carter decision, the Truchon decision, Bill C-14, Bill C-7, and then there was a point at which I had done everything I could professionally to try to stop the expansion of medical assistance in dying, euthanasia and assisted suicide. And I reached a point where I thought I need to share my story. And it wasn't because I wanted to. Stories related to mental health issues are deeply personal and very painful to share. And there's a lot of stigma, especially in the legal community, right? So it wasn't a decision I made lightly, but I felt that if our nation was going to go down this road and I had this story and I did not share, that I would feel regret. And so I wanted to share because I think my story, like the stories of many people who struggle with mental health issues, highlights the reality that the motivations that cause people to access euthanasia and assisted suicide, that desire to end their suffering, is the same motivation that motivates someone with a mental health issue to access to actually complete suicide and try to commit suicide. The reality is that those who are suicidal and those who access medical assistance in dying both suffer from suffering, and both are seeking to end that suffering. And so there really is a lot of commonality when I hear the stories of people who access medical assistance in dying. I have deep empathy for them. I understand the pain and the suffering that they're articulating. Not all suffering's the same, so I understand it in my own way. I know what it's like to look to your future and think that there's just going to be suffering for the rest of your life. But I'm here today because thankfully, in my moment of suffering, no one came to me and said, maybe assisted suicide is the solution. I'm very thankful. And my concern is that we now live in a country where in a few short years, assuming the delay actually is passed, in a few short years, if someone like myself is in a moment of deep despair and depression and psychological suffering, instead of us coming alongside those individuals and saying that there is hope, there is meaning, and there is purpose to their lives, we're instead going to say, maybe depression is right. Maybe there isn't any hope for you anymore. I won't go into all the details of my story because, it's cold, and the reality is that my story is there are so many different stories, and so this really isn't about me. But I just want to say, I started struggling without kind of any explanation. I often found that very difficult because it was like I was just sad all the time, always, with no explanation. And psychological pain, mental health issues are uniquely scary because unlike a physical condition where you can see it and you can try to fix it, you can't see the pain. You don't know where it comes from or what to do about it. And so it was very scary being a young person facing this endless future. That's what I thought. I thought this would continue for the rest of my life. And the reality is that it wouldn't, but I didn't know that at the time. And so within a few short periods, within a 2-year period, I struggled with self-harm. I struggled with eating disorders, as many young people do. I attempted to take my life a number of times. And like I said at the press conference today, I'm here not because I wasn't motivated to take my life, but because I didn't have the information and the means necessary to guarantee my death. And medical assistance in dying would change that. It would give young people, through university 18 and up, it would give young people who struggle with their mental health guaranteed access to death. And the reality is, and Dr. Saba, I think, will mention this directly, is many people who attempt suicide do not try again because that is a very scary experience for them, and they don't have the information or the means necessary to guarantee their death, and praise God for that. But unfortunately, medical assistance in dying will guarantee that those who are suffering and those who think that they don't have a future without suffering will actually be able to end their life. I want to just say, there are some people who say that saying medical assistance in dying and suicide are the same is not the case, that we can distinguish between the two, that some suicides are rational and some are irrational. As someone who's been in that space, I find that very irritating, very paternalistic and patronizing. The reality is that my desire to end my suffering was just as rational as the desire of Kay Carter, Nicole Gladu, Jean Truchon, all these individuals who wanted, euthanasia-assisted suicide. It's rational if the solution to suffering is death. But the reality is that we as a society should never say that the solution to suffering is death. The solution to suffering is always care. Compassion, true compassion, is always treatment and support. And so ultimately, as the truck goes by and creates a lot of noise, ultimately I think the message that I hope to leave you with today is that when I was in that moment of suffering, when I was contemplating ending my own life, what I needed was for someone to come alongside me and speak hope and meaning and purpose into my life. I didn't need someone to come and say, maybe depression is right, maybe there isn't any hope for you. And if I was ever in that position again, which might in fact take place, I don't know. But if I was ever in that position again, I would not want the government and society and the healthcare system to say that you should go ahead. Yes, it is okay because death is a solution to suffering. I do not want that message. The reality is that our job as a compassionate, caring society that doesn't abandon people, our job is to bring a message of hope, a message of purpose and meaning to those who are in moments of deep despair. And I would also just say, some people talk about discrimination. They say that it's paternalistic for us to tell people who struggle with their mental health that they don't know what's good for them. The reality is that if we're going to say that it's discrimination to not expand euthanasia and assisted suicide to the mentally ill, what we're saying is that the good that we're providing as a society is death, rather than the good being the protection of the law, the protection of the criminal code that protects vulnerable people from being induced to commit suicide in a moment of weakness. So just wrapping up, I want to thank each one of you again for coming out. This is an issue that is, of professional interest, but it's deeply personal to me. The number of young people I know who will be impacted by this expansion is profound. And so I would just encourage all of you to continue doing this work. It is hard to live in a society that offers death as a solution to suffering. It's a scary thing. But I would encourage you not to despair, not to give in to that sense of hopelessness that we see our society giving into, but instead to continue drawing close to the mentally ill young person in your life, the disabled person in your life, the elderly person in your life. Continue drawing close to them, sharing a message of life and hope and meaning and purpose, affirming the inherent dignity and value of every human life. And I really believe that if we do that, that we will be able to save lives. And my hope and prayer is that our government will change course and will hear the voices of Canadians like myself and many others here today who say that we want to live in a world that says even a life with suffering is one worth living. That is the message that we should share. And I thank you all for sharing that message today. Thank you.
Bravo. Thank you very much, Leah. Dr. Paul Saab is a family physician from Montreal, and he'll be speaking from his professional point of view. Canada has become a discriminatory, non-inclusive society. We discriminate against people that are not like us, and that includes those with mental health illness. We like to pride ourselves as being an inclusive society, a democratic society, a caring society. But what we're doing right now goes against all those values that we have been told that we believe in. As of March 17th of this year, and it's only a few weeks away, Canada officially will start euthanizing people with mental illness. That is, unless there's a delay, which the Senate is supposed to vote on today for 3 years. But to even think in our mind, have we lost our minds? Are we totally insane that we've come to this point where we're debating not killing people because of mental health illness? We have some of the finest psychiatrists, psychologists, social workers. We have a public health care system, and we know it's deficient, but that's no reason to kill people with mental health illness. Have we totally lost it? And how can the Senate not delay it? Why not just not delay it? Why not bury it? Because we should bury laws like this that have no sense, that devalue human life. We've started by devaluing people who were sick, who had a terminal illness, and we never know for sure who has a terminal illness because 50% of people, we tell them they're going to die in the next 6 months, and we're wrong. Doctors are wrong. We're wrong 20% of the time in terms of diagnosis. You have a fatal condition, and they don't. Everybody knows the stories, but these are U.S. insurance studies, because in the U.S., they don't like to get sued, so they like to be close to accurate. But we started with this, with the Carter decision. And then after that, we said, well, in Quebec, they said, well, you know what? If you're disabled and you're in a wheelchair, you should be allowed to die. And somebody went in there. But most of the people who want to die in those conditions is because their lives are misery, social misery. The Canadian government and our provinces, because they're under finances by our parliament, by Mr. Trudeau, you know, who loves to travel around the world, who loves to give arms to countries so they can kill each other instead of sending peacemakers, but I don't want to get into that debate. But nevertheless, we should be caring for people. We should be providing better care and not be killing disabled, and now people with mental disabilities are going to get killed. Why am I here? I'm a family doctor. What do I know about psychiatry? Well, it so happens that half of patients who come in with anxiety, depression, stress in their life, they can't work, burnout, they come to the family doctor. And sadly enough, there's not enough of us right now. But anyway, they come to us, and we try to care for them the best we can. And then we try to send them to see psychiatrists. The problem is you can't see a psychiatrist. Yeah, that's okay. I haven't memorized. We can't see a psychiatrist. They can't see it. In fact, the delay to see a psychiatrist is approximately 5 months in Montreal, where I live. But with the law that they're planning to pass, it's 3 month waiting time. So the time the patient gets a call to see their psychiatrist, they've been dead at least 2 months. Does that make any sense? And people just don't need a psychiatrist to fix them. They need psychologists, they need social workers, they need affordable housing. They can't pay their rent, so they're stressed. I have people come to me, they're stressed. I can't afford to pay my bills. I can't afford to feed my family. This causes them stress, depression, agonizing stress. And then if they have underlying mental health problems to begin with, they're even in worse shape. And what did the pandemic show us? Well, it showed us that people who are vulnerable, that nobody likes the word vulnerable. Let's say people who are at risk. People who are at risk were the young, women, Native people,
Poor people, people already with underlying mental health problems, and other marginalized groups. These were the most likely to get stressed and depressed. So what are we doing? We're going to, and then now they're talking about another pandemic. First of all, we shouldn't be creating these gain of function viruses in our labs, and Mr. Trudeau should be doing something about that. He should be saying, stop doing this research. But no, we're going to just continue on with things and scare the kajibis out of people. And when they're so scared and they're depressed, we'll kill them. So they don't have to worry or suffer anymore. This is sick. This is more than sickness. This is pure evil. That's the best term I can use it. Leah referred to about people that they don't really want to die. And it's true, they don't want to die. They just want to end their distress. And a Harvard study showed that 9 out of 10 people who did not succeed to kill themselves, they were unsuccessful in their suicide attempt, after proper treatment decided to continue to live. They didn't want to die. So most people don't want to die. But if we kill them, they'll have no choice. They're going to be dead. Cold dead. What do we need here in Canada is more care. We had a little dog here. It was scratching. It was irritating me. But then I said, that's a good dog. Because that dog, it helps us. And people need alternative treatments like dog therapy. We have a little dog at home. It barks a lot. It aggravates us. But most times it gives us joy and love and support. Most people, they need that. They need animal therapy. They need dance, music, art. But they also need their basics. They need food security. They can't afford to go to the never mind going to the restaurant. They can't afford even the basics of food. And that's where we should be working to help these people and give them affordable housing. And then other social supports. But make sure they have a decent living and then a little recreation in their life. That's what we need to do. We shouldn't be killing people. So I'm going to say a few words in French. It's not my native language, but 80% of my patients are francophone in Montreal. I was born and raised in Montreal. And I was blessed to have been able to learn French. À partir du 17 mars 2024, les Canadiens avec des problèmes de santé mentale pourront avoir accès à l'euthanasie. Au Canada, on appelle ça l'aide médicale à mourir. Ce n'est pas une aide médicale à mourir dont les gens ont besoin, mais plutôt une aide médicale à vivre. Environ 1 personne sur 5 aura une maladie mentale au cours de sa vie. Moins d'une moitié chercheront à obtenir une aide professionnelle. La pandémie récente a aggravé des problèmes de santé mentale, surtout pour les personnes marginalisées, les femmes, les jeunes adultes, les autochtones, les pauvres, les personnes avec des problèmes de troubles mentaux préexistants. Plus de 50% des personnes reçoivent des soins de santé mentale de leur médecin de famille, souvent sans l'aide d'autres intervenants. Notre système de santé et social est déficient pour les personnes avec des problèmes de santé mentale. Selon le sondage de l'Institut Angus, la plupart des Canadiens ne soutiennent pas l'aide médicale à mourir pour les maladies mentales et souhaitent une amélioration des soins de santé mentale. Ici au Québec, le temps d'attente moyenne entre une consultation d'un psychiatre et un traitement est environ 5 mois. Cependant, la nouvelle loi exige une période d'attente de 3 mois avant que l'euthanasie ne soit administrée. En d'autres termes, la personne qui souhaite consulter un psychiatre sera morte depuis longtemps avant d'obtenir un rendez-vous avec le psychiatre. Il y a toujours une raison pour vivre, mais en tant qu'un soignant, nous devons trouver cette raison pour que la personne veuille vivre. Personne ne veut pas mourir. Les gens veulent plutôt échapper à leur détresse émotionnelle. Nous devons les aider dans leur détresse. La plupart des psychiatres ne sont pas favorables à la légalisation de l'euthanasie pour les malades mentaux en raison des risques accrus pour certains groupes tels que les femmes, les jeunes adultes, les pauvres et d'autres groupes marginalisés. En outre, les psychiatres souvent ne sont pas d'accord quel patient est irrémédiable. Du point de vue juridique, la demande d'aide médicale à mourir pour les malades mentaux ne remplit pas la condition de consentement libre et éclairé. Plus une personne vit avec une maladie mentale, moins elle est apte de donner un consentement libre et éclairé. Comme société, nous devons améliorer notre système de santé pour les personnes atteintes de problèmes de santé mentale. Il faut assurer un accès rapide aux psychiatres, aux psychologues et aux travailleurs sociaux. Il faut garantir l'accès à une grande variété de traitements, y compris l'art, la musique, la danse, les animaux, les loisirs, d'autres thérapies. Nous devons également garantir la gratuité des médicaments, un logement abordable et une sécurité alimentaire. Comme société, nous devons offrir les meilleurs soins aux personnes avec des problèmes de santé mentale. Nous devons les soigner et non les tuer par l'euthanasie.
Thank you, Dr. Saba. As I said earlier, and Dr. Saba referenced it, there are people who are living in poverty who are seeking death by euthanasia. There's people who are experiencing homelessness. There's people who are having problems receiving medical treatment. There's people who are going through difficult social realities, but because they have an irremediable medical condition, meaning a form of a disability, they are not qualified to be killed in Canada. That's even beyond the issue of the euthanasia for mental illness, which sadly is happening in Canada. Remember, the law that they are preventing to go into place until 2027 would be euthanasia for mental illness alone. Okay? So let's be very clear about this. Euthanasia for mental illness is already happening. It's just that euthanasia for mental illness alone is the issue at hand that they're dealing with right now with Bill C-62. Debbie Duval is going to say a few words from Camping Life Coalition. She's one of the organizers of this event. Thank you, Debbie.
Go, Debbie.
Thank you very much for coming. To begin with, as you know, Campaign Life Coalition advocates for the sanctity of life from conception to natural death. So our position on euthanasia and assisted suicide is very clear. We oppose state-sanctioned killing. All that. Campaign Life has been sounding the alarm about the expansion of euthanasia, and we've been warning about that slippery slope. You give a little bit, and they take a lot. We were met with people didn't understand that this would ever happen. They thought just, oh well, this is just compassionate. But then here we are today, rallying to stop the killing of the mentally ill. So here we are, and who knows what's next? We need to care for these people, not kill them. This government has it totally backwards. Here they have promotions for anti-suicide and let's talk hotlines for all those who are suffering. And then on the other hand, they're thinking to solve the mental illness crisis, we should kill them. This is wrong. Thank God for concerned Canadians across the country who have stepped up, who have written, who have stopped this, who have certainly helped save this and brought a pause to this bill so that it won't expand. I think that Canadians are finally realizing what's going on. They're finally seeing what's happening, and I have great hope with that. So thank you all, and thank everybody across the country who are doing that. CLC is really encouraging the Senate to pass Bill 62 to pause the expansion of euthanasia, and more than that, we're wanting them to throw that whole thing out, the whole expansion completely out. And actually, we want them to reverse euthanasia in its entirety. This is not what we want. MAiD, in my mind, is the murder and intentional death of Canadians, of the most vulnerable Canadians. And we just can't do that. And shame on this government for allowing it to continue. Thanks so much for coming. Thank you.
Our next presenter, Arpad, is from Campaign Québec V, which means he'll be speaking in French.
Well, hello. Not as much as the presentation itself. I just have prepared a short statement. So on behalf of Quebec Life Coalition, I'll be speaking in French. Je m'appelle Arpad Nagui, je suis le directeur d'opérations politiques à Campagne Québec Vie, l'organisation pro-vie au Québec. OK. Campagne Québec Vie, on appuie les efforts d'Alex Schallenberg et de la Coalition nationale, la Coalition pour la prévention de l'euthanasie. Ensemble, nous revendiquons l'arrêt de l'expansion de l'euthanasie pour personnes atteintes de maladies mentales. Autant que nous accueillons le délai dans l'application de cette loi, nous croyons que cette loi doit être complètement retirée, et ce, dès aujourd'hui. Nous devons mettre fin à l'érosion du respect de la vie au Canada. À Campagne Québec Vie, nous croyons en la dignité de chaque individu. Cette dignité doit être respectée, en premier lieu en valorisant la vie et le bien-être de la personne. Nous vivons dans une société où l'accès aux soins de santé essentiels est continuellement réduit, mais l'accès aux soins d'homicide légal est continuellement élargi. Dans notre société, l'accès à des soins essentiels de santé est affreuse. Les temps d'attente sont extrêmement longs. Que dit-on aux individus souffrant de maladies mentales quand on offre de les tuer au lieu de les soigner? Alors, merci aux autres participants ici qui ont parlé et parleront sur les détails spécifiques de cette loi. À Campagne Québec Vie, nous croyons que l'euthanasie n'aurait jamais dû être permis au Canada. Nous croyons en la vie de la conception à la mort naturelle. Nous croyons en une société de compassion qui accompagne les individus à travers les étapes douloureuses de leur vie. J'aimerais porter maintenant à des paroles de Viktor Frankl, qui est un survivant des camps de concentration durant la Deuxième Guerre mondiale. Alors, il a dit: « Pour faire une analogie, la souffrance d'un homme est similaire au comportement d'un gaz. Si une certaine quantité de gaz est pompée dans une chambre vide, elle remplira complètement et uniformément, quelle que soit la taille de la chambre. Ainsi, la souffrance remplit complètement l'âme humaine et l'esprit conscient, que la souffrance soit grande ou petite. Par conséquent, la taille de la souffrance humaine est absolument relative. » Viktor Frankl expliquait la différence entre certains prisonniers qui ont survécu et ceux qui ont abandonné et qui sont morts. Il nous dit que ce n'est pas l'ampleur de la souffrance, mais la raison de vivre à travers cette souffrance qui différencie ceux qui ont survécu et ceux qui ont décédé. Une de ces citations les plus connues est la suivante. D'une certaine manière, la souffrance cesse d'être une souffrance au moment où elle trouve un sens, comme le sens d'un sacrifice. Alors, pour conclure, nous exhortons les médecins, les infirmiers, infirmières et toute personne travaillant dans les soins de santé à aider leurs patients à trouver une raison de vivre, sans quoi toute douleur devient insupportable. Et je vais répéter cette citation de Viktor Frankl. D'une certaine manière, la souffrance cesse d'être une souffrance au moment où elle trouve un sens. Alors, nous devons bâtir une société de compassion et à travers cette compassion, donner des raisons de vivre pour toute personne souffrante. Alors, merci beaucoup.
And our final speaker of the morning will be Colin Postma from ARPA. And please come forward. He's got a few messages for us to hear.
All right, thank you very much, Alex. My name's Colin Postma. I'm the Director of Communications for ARPA Canada. One of our campaigns is carenotkill.ca. Now, many of the speakers already this morning have been speaking to you about the grave concerns about the expansion of euthanasia in Canada that's been going on for several years already. And I don't want to re-emphasize all those points, but I want to turn it around and say thank you to each one of you who have been active in pushing back on the government's rapid expansion, the slippery slope of euthanasia in our country. Without each of you, we wouldn't be able to do the things that we've been able to do in the last couple of years. The fact that Canadian culture is changing on this topic, that people are beginning to speak out about the issue of euthanasia, especially starting with mental illness, but moving on beyond that is, moving on beyond that is all thanks to so many of you and for your work on that. Now, Bill C-62 has already been mentioned. It's in the Senate this week, We want to see that passed, but we also know that's only the beginning. That can't be where this ends. And we know that's not going to end because part of what you've been able to do over the last period of time, and the people that we keep bringing on board onto this issue in the next couple of years are going to start rolling back the dial on things like disability rights, or giving people with disability the right to live and to not have to go into a hospital and question whether they're going to get the care that they need. And that's thanks to each and every one of you. So let's not stop this. Let's continue on. And I'm hopeful that we've seen the bottom of this and that from the here on, we'll be able to continue climbing out of the hole that this country's dug for itself. Thank you very much.
Get a picture of it.
So thank you very much. And I was just talking to one of the I would say security people, or the people for the Hill. They're very pleased at how well we've come to here and how we're respecting all the rules. So this is good, because this is a straightforward, peaceful protest to make it very clear of our position. So as I've said earlier, it's not enough. We're happy that things are being delayed, and of course, things aren't over yet. The Senate hasn't yet voted on this. Remember that. And I don't know if the Senate's going to cause trouble or not. I don't know. But they're the ones who gave us euthanasia for mental illness. If you remember what happened during Bill C-7, the government presented Bill C-7, which was horrific to start with, and then when they passed it, which was terrible, it went to the Senate and they added in euthanasia for mental illness alone. They added that in. And they said it was based on the concept that the Carter decision, already guaranteed euthanasia for mental illness alone, which it did not. The Carter decision did say euthanasia would be allowed for physical and psychological suffering. It did not say mental illness alone. The Carter decision also said other things. It said that we'd have to have this very, stringent system. Do you see a stringent system anywhere? Do you see a system that, people are being protected? No. I'm really concerned because, not only has killing become normalized, there's a whole group of physicians. Most physicians aren't like this, but there's a whole group of physicians who are really pro-killing. Let's be pretty honest. There's several physicians in Canada who have made this their job. This is what they do. They're not doing other things anymore. They're killing people. That's what they do. And so therefore access to killing is not a problem. And on top of it, sadly, they're not worried about who they're killing because they think it's that person's right. They ask for it, I'll kill them. But there's many reasons people might ask for death, and that's why it's so important about Leah's message. Because Leah was in a time where she would have wanted death. And aren't we thankful that she's here today? Because the times are different. When you're in a different state of mind at times in your life, things, you're not the way you would normally be. Things happen in life. And this is we're human beings. And this is the sad reality that we're not thinking of what it means to be human and how we're affected by our whole physiology and how things happen in our lives. And sometimes we need protection. That's just the reality. But anyway, we now have a lot of homelessness in Canada, more than ever before. We don't have to discuss all the reasons because there's lots of reasons for that. That's beyond my question. But I'm concerned because of the permissiveness of euthanasia now. Are we now going to start solving our homelessness problem by, they asked for death so we can kill them? Look at the issue of disabilities. When we're talking about people with disabilities, remember, to qualify for euthanasia now, you need to have an irremediable medical condition. Now, what does that mean? I don't know. I can't define it. Can you define it? I don't know. Even the doctor can't define it, okay? What does it mean to have an irremediable medical condition? Essentially what it means is that you have to have a chronic condition. Lots of people have chronic conditions. And so then they qualify for death. And then they're going through situations where they might be in poverty. So let's say their disability is such that they're getting a disability pension. And of course, rents have gone skyrocketing. And if you don't have subsidized rent, if you don't have that situation, what are you going to do? Where are you going to go? What are you going to be? So they're asking for death. Then we killed them. Well, the crazy thing is, we didn't just save on the medical care in the future, which is sad. Because remember, follow the money. We saved on the years of the disability pension they would have received. And I'm not saying there's any savings here because we lost in our culture a person who was part of our community. Nonetheless, the point of it is that this has gone crazy. I wrote an article recently called Euthanasia Has Gone Mad. I mean mad as in crazy, okay? This is where we're at. Just give you one other thing and then we'll be done soon. I was recently speaking in Slovenia. Now, why would Alex Schadenberg go to Slovenia? Well, because Slovenia is debating Canadian-style euthanasia. So the Slovenian government, they have a very similar government to ours. They have a liberal government which doesn't have enough seats, so they're being propped up by a socialist party that gives them enough seats to rule, right? So it's the same idea as in Canada. But they have this euthanasia bill, and it's really like almost identical to our bill, our law. So they bring me in to talk about what's going on in Canada. The world is aghast by what's going on in Canada. So maybe, sadly, all these deaths in Canada, which is a tragedy, a massive tragedy, at least maybe something good comes of it, meaning other countries won't be stupid enough to do what we're doing. And I say stupid because that's what it is. It's gone crazy. It's mad. It's nuts where we've gone. And yet somehow we think, oh, this is about choice and freedom and autonomy. It's not about choice, freedom, and autonomy when you put poison into someone's bloodstream. Who's kidding who here? Like, who's kidding who here? Then they say, oh, let me tell you something else. I know I'm going. Might as well go. No, they say, oh, but Alex, it's a peaceful death. It's a peaceful death. Well, how do they do euthanasia? How is this done? Dr. Sabin knows. They give you 3 different drugs. The first drug is a drug to put you into coma. The second drug puts you into a state of paralysis. Now, why do they do that? They do that because, obviously speaking, it becomes a peaceful death. But the reason is in the Netherlands, earlier in the euthanasia model in the Netherlands, they had a lot of bad deaths. You know, people would go into convulsions, people would be throwing up. You'd have all these terrible situations. So if you put them into coma and then you put them into a state of paralysis, well, they're not going to go into convulsions. They're not going to throw up, okay? And then the final drug, what does it do? They've always lied to people, but they're actually not telling the truth. It actually shuts down your lungs. That's what it does. So what happens is when your lungs stop moving, they fill with fluid. And then your heart stops beating because you're not breathing, right? So it takes about 5 to 6 minutes, and maybe 15, and you're dead. But it's not a death by shutting down your heart. It's a death by drowning. But they say, oh, but these look like peaceful deaths. Well, darn it, if you're in sleep, if you're in coma, and you're paralyzed, it's going to look peaceful. But it's not peaceful. Think about it. It's horrific. It's actually inhumane. If you did it to a dog, they'd put you in jail. It's serious. Anyway, this is where we're at in Canada today. It's crazy. So this is the first step that they're delaying. Under this government, that's actually a miracle. But nonetheless, hopefully a future government will reverse this, and hopefully we can just reverse it completely. This is crazy. Now, how do we get there? How do we get there? That's a tough question because, you know, we do have a bad Supreme Court decision. But, you know, the fact of it is that silence won't help us. And the fact that there's so many people who have come today just by, you know, getting our message and showing up in the middle of the day, that's a victory. So thank you very much for being here.
What about us left behind when people choose this?
You know, there's been a lot of pain of families, you know, and we're actually, funny enough, we're starting this new program of bereavement for people who are left behind, because there's a lot of people who are left behind. I got an email from a woman from British Columbia whose grandfather died by euthanasia, and she was going through a lot of, you know, emotional suffering and bereavement. And this would be normal if he died, you know, of a natural death, or let's say it was a car accident or something terrible like that. But it was euthanasia, so she went to a bereavement counselor, and the bereavement counselor told her, you shouldn't be bereaving, you shouldn't be sad at all. Your grandfather chose to die. Well, that's abandonment. That's abandonment. Like, who's kidding who here? But, you know, the culture has to cover up, and this is the other problem, right? So once you start killing, the culture has to justify. It has to cover up. And this is what we're experiencing right, left, and center. So now the concept of speaking out against it is becoming more difficult because people want to shut you down. Why do they want to shut you down? Oh, well, you're hurting those other people. There's so many people going through pain. Well, they are going through pain. You're right. If they weren't going through pain, they wouldn't be human. If they weren't going through pain, they wouldn't have the type of emotions that they need to be true caring people. But the fact of it is now they have to cover up the reality. And this is the sad thing in culture, when we got to cover up what's happened when we kill people. But the fact of it is that, with all the poverty, homelessness, these crises going on in our culture, the answer more and more sadly is death. And that to me is sick. And that's where we are today, sadly. And the biggest thing we could do, the most important thing you could do today, well, the law is what it is today. That's what it is today. I'm not saying it should be. I'm not saying it should continue. I'm just saying it is. The best thing you could do is you need to be the caring presence in your community. The people you know. You will know people who are going through difficult times. You don't know that they might be considering death, but you know they're going through difficult times. You need to visit them. You need to be with them. People die by loneliness. The greatest poverty of all is this abandonment, this loneliness. And this culture has more loneliness than ever before. We know it. We see it. You just have to sit on the city bus and you see it. It's sad, right? It's a reality. We need to be with others. I'm not talking about constantly because we all have our lives. I understand that. But when you know your neighbor is not doing well, visit your neighbor. This was something that was normal in a previous culture that wasn't that long ago. Think of your mothers. Think of your grandmothers, how they used to go and bring soup and go visit and do these things. It wasn't because they were they were nice people, but it was because that's the way they were knowing to be as a human being. And we've lost that. We've lost the nature of the human person. Why did we lose the nature of the human person? Because we became radical individualists. We listened to people like Justin Trudeau, and we are all our own gods. We can make our own decisions. We can do our own thing. But guess what? That's not how we are. We are interconnected. We need each other. Right? That's how we are. We need each other. And the culture has abandoned people in need. We need each other. That's what's at hand. And that's the challenge to all of us. It's a difficult thing because sometimes we have to go out of our own way to just be a caring person. And I'm not talking about a situation where we have to proselytize them and things like that. Like, they might be open to talking about other things, but just that caring presence makes a huge difference in someone's life. You'd be shocked when you say to someone, euthanasia is a bad idea because you wouldn't be in my life anymore. You'd be shocked at the effect of that. People actually think that their life has no meaning, no purpose. They think they have no value. They have value, they have meaning, they have purpose. So thank you very much. And I've got other people here who might want to talk to us. The speakers are here. And thank you for coming out. And enjoy the rest of the day.